Ladies and gentlemen, open banking pioneers, hello and a very warm welcome to our campfire today. Before we start, I'd like to pay our respects to our late Queen. Our thoughts and condolences at this dreadfully sad time are with the royal family. Our late Queen was a remarkable, inspirational, truly inspirational, and with a selfless sense of duty, the likes of which we are highly likely never to see again. The huge outpouring of affection around the world is testament to this. Thank you, Mom. Now, we always ask our global community what the hot topics are that you want to talk about, and we can generally predict it. VRP, monetizing data, a fair and equitable business model. However, today's topic, shopping in the metaverse, had a stratospheric lead, which in truth surprised us. So we heard you, and this is where we are today. We're going to be talking about the buzzword of the moment, the metaverse. Now, I will tell you, we were actually going to do this from the metaverse, but we had a couple of slight technical issues, so we will have another campfire from the metaverse. We will be discussing what it means, what it means for you, what it means for your businesses. And let me just tell you that until this afternoon, until I was making my avatar, which hopefully one day we will see, I genuinely couldn't understand why anybody would pay virtual money for anything, sorry, real money, anything that was virtual. And I desperately wanted my avatar to wear a beautiful black blouse in respect of our late Queen, and I couldn't find one from the standard options. Now, believe you me, I would have paid royally to buy a black blouse. In the end, the avatar's actually, she's got a purple one, equally regal. But it actually brought it home to me. So I'm beginning to get it. Now I'm intrigued and I'm keen to learn more from our panel of experts that can explain this continuum from reality to the metaverse, the blending of physical and digital to create new sources of value and indeed new marketplaces. Sci-fi fans will be familiar with the metaverse, as the term has been used since the 1980s. It was first coined by writer Neil Stephenson in his 1982 novel Snow Crash. Now here he presents, he created digital images which we now know as avatars, so that everybody could escape from their own drudgery of the totalitarian world. Now, 40 years later, this has become a reality. Now, many people associate the metaverse with virtual reality and online gaming, and I am sure there are many in our audience that every evening try and drag their children off games that are metaverse driven, whether that be Minecraft or Roblox. But beyond creating your own avatar and meeting people and playing in the world, the metaverse is rapidly growing into a global marketplace where you can purchase digital and real life goods such as art, land, and clothes. So for example, Coca-Cola have created its own merchandise that you can purchase by decentralized users. And last year, they even created a Gucci garden where you can buy digital Gucci products for your avatar, and you will actually get your own non-fungible token as a receipt. How cool is that? Now, this opens up huge possibilities for retailers and manufacturers. With engaged audience of hundreds of thousands around the world, there are plenty of massive numbers bandied about the forecast potential of the metaverse. I'm just going to choose one of them, and that's from Bloomberg. By 2024, they forecast it as a whopping 800 billion, that's with a B, $800 billion. But as people flock to the metaverse for their shopping needs, banks and payment providers will need to step up to support their customers, as ultimately they need to access money to transact. Now, this presents challenges and obviously opportunities for payments, and particularly I would suggest data across different jurisdictions. Payments need to be facilitated on decentralized platforms and through a variety of blockchains. In some cases, users will need to purchase and pay with cryptocurrencies or with tokens that they may want to transfer back to a fiat currency. Shoppers will, as we all do, expect a fast and frictionless transaction, all of which can be, and here's the magic, created by FinTechs and open banking. Now we're talking. This evolution of the internet, which is what the metaverse is, will impact on our commercial models. So will it be up to the banks and the payment processors to support this? How can this be achieved, and what are the main barriers we need to overcome? In our campfire today, you will be given a sense of what the metaverse is all about and how it intertwines with the world of payments, and it really does. If you've never entered the metaverse, I invite you to give it a go, jump in. At OBE, we've had a play, and I'd like to thank Accenture now for all their hard work and patience in helping us learn more about the metaverse, playing in their metaverse. We had the giggles and the nerves, but that's all about managing change. So if you haven't had a play in the metaverse, I would encourage you to jump in and give it a go and experience it for yourselves. So let's go on this journey of discovery together. We are delighted to have Liz Lumley, Deputy Editor of The Banker, with us today, hosting our fascinating discussion with experts Nick Thomas from MasterCard, who eloquently will make the link into open banking. And once I heard this, I really began to get it, or begun even to get it. We have Axel Quack from Salesforce, who has a presentation to show us. And we have Anil from Accenture, who is beyond brilliant and has been incredibly patient with us all. So thank you. So Liz, over to you for our masterclass in the metaverse.
Lovely. Thank you, Helen, so much for that wonderful introduction. And as she mentioned, yes, we're going to be talking about shopping, which I think most of us have a lot of experience doing, and the metaverse, which most of us probably don't have a lot of experience doing, which I think Helen did allude to it, or our small technical issues. But with any emerging technology, there's always a beginning and a middle, and then acceptance and an end. So hopefully we will get better at moving about in virtual and physical worlds in the future. But we have a wonderful panel here today, and I'm going to start off asking everyone the same question to open up. I was speaking this week to someone from DBS Bank in Singapore, who is a real sort of evangelist for the metaverse. And he said, and sometimes when people talk about the impact of metaverse technology and Web3, it's almost like that parable of the blind men in a room touching the trunk of an elephant and the tail of an elephant in the ear, and not mentioning the actual elephant in the room. So I really would love to know about each of our panelists' vision for what the metaverse actually is. So Axel, I'm going to start with you. Talk us through it.
Absolutely, I'm more than happy to. So first of all, I would say that we should talk about metaverses. So it's not a singular, it's a plural, because in my vision actually, or in others' visions as well, it's like a portal where we actually go from one metaverse to the other first. And on the other hand side, it's obviously, because sometimes we only talk about virtual worlds on the one hand side, here we have a combination of obviously between a virtual world and a real world. So think about that you can easily jump from a virtual world through a portal, and then you are in everything that we see right now. So it's a combination of an online and an offline world, first of all.
No, yes, I've heard that a lot. I mean, it's when I think Helen alluded to this, is people tend to talk a lot about virtual reality and augmented reality, but that metaverse is really that sort of going back and forth between the physical and virtual world. So it's interesting to explore that. So Anu, I'll go to you. What is your vision for the metaverse or metaverses?
Yeah, I think like any other technology, one of the things that we need to achieve in the metaverse is that ubiquity with everything else that we do in our daily lives. And I think that there are strides that we need to make sure that we get there. The way I look at the metaverse is it's another platform for us to exist as a psychology of humanity, and make sure that we share our experiences and we are embedded within that experience. We saw during the pandemic, most of our kids turned to the metaverse to socialize, to communicate, and that in itself tells us a lot about where the future generations of humanity are going in terms of the usage of metaverse. So I think we have a big role to play as leaders and people who are implementing these technologies and driving these technologies in the industry, that we are making it safe. We are connecting the right sets of data and building it in a way that people can communicate and be part of that metaverse and not be too decoupled from the real life.
No, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of our children, especially if you have teenagers, are already well versed in the metaverse. And I think I had to write down an assertion for my son that I will not join Discord at any point in time in the future. He's very adamant about that. But Nick, I'll go to you. What is your vision for what is the metaverse? Nick, I think you're on mute, even though we can see your avatar on the back, which is excellent.
Thank you. So obviously, being in the world of open banking for a long time, I've seen this open banking emerge and create this really this FinTech universe. And you think about all the FinTech apps and all the benefit to consumers that we get on our phones. But this idea of open banking, enabling the creation of an ecosystem of value-added services. And it's not just the phone, right? That is the place where you can see that kind of innovation. The idea is that this is a virtual world. And inside this virtual world, you're going to do, the more time you spend there, the more things you're going to want to get. And I think that the metaverse and open banking go so well together because it's another platform for engagement with people. I think the real sticky application of the metaverse is the hybrid work environment. So when you're on a Zoom call with other people, there's a certain level of engagement above and beyond just a phone call. And when you engage with people in the metaverse, there is an incremental benefit to the human connection that you get through a metaverse conversation. It's uncanny. And now, whether it's a 5% improvement or a 10% improvement, there's an improvement there. And when I first experienced it, I thought, you know what, if we're going to be in a hybrid work environment, this idea of the metaverse, if it's better in enhancing that human connection and collaboration, then I think it will be sticky beyond gaming, beyond, kind of the gimmicky stuff, to be the next generation of a Zoom kind of engagement at work, because we are all in, or most of us are in distributed teams. And so that to me is the real sticky application, is the work application. And then combined with that, the stuff that when you're in there, you need a black dress, or there's a cool shirt, or there's things that you want to buy. And when you think about it, you're buying stuff from people all over the world in this metaverse. And so you think about the transactions and the financial transactions and engagements with data that you might do in the metaverse. And it just kind of brings to a global view some of the problems and opportunities we see in individual countries around open banking.
Interesting. So Nick, I'm actually going to stay with you because I agree with you. I think that stickiness of the metaverse has to move beyond gaming or fantasy realms or role playing and sort of interact with our everyday life. And nothing is more integral to our everyday life than shopping. I think most people have bought things at some point, but I want to really understand how this technology is going to impact shopping. Is it going to make us want to buy more, or will it change how we shop and maybe our shopping behavior? So Nick, I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, when you're engaging with a website, you're going through a shopping cart experience, we know what that's like. You've got a keyboard, a mouse, you're in front of a screen. We're going to be doing some of the exact same things, but inside of a 3D virtual world. And so what does a shopping cart look like in a digital world? If you haven't seen Ready Player One, that's, that kind of experience that they forecast is, I think it's very real. And so we will be buying things in the metaverse. We will be buying property. We will be paying people to create corporate swag and corporate worlds for people to come to in that want to participate virtually. And so I think that it absolutely will become a regular thing for us, just as the internet and buying on from websites is a regular thing today. I think that we'll see more and more of metaverse-like virtual reality and augmented reality shopping experiences emerge.
So Axel, I'm going to move on to you. I mean, I'm kind of interested in this idea of the impacting shopping and whether or not it's the technology that influences behavior or the behavior itself is going to shape the technology. I think there was a speech I saw a few years ago from the CTO of Walmart in the US, big giant store. And during the Black Friday shopping day before Christmas, they found out that 50% of all online sales were done by people that were in the store at the time. So people already started acting on different universes before we even were banding about this term metaverse. So, I mean, Axel, I'd really love to hear your views on how that sort of world of shopping will be impacted by the metaverse.
That's interesting. When I hear the word will, I actually have to say or admit that I have 2 kids, and obviously they play Fortnite, and they are already buying a lot of digital objects nowadays. The burden is, and you probably have experienced that as well, if Fortnite wouldn't be around anymore, all their investments in terms of objects are gone. So what is interesting in that realm, and this is the does and the will comes now, because currently a lot of projects like Engine, with Engine Coin, with huge investments from Ubisoft and others, they're investing into blockchain solutions where you can use your objects across the different platforms. So imagine you have a sword in Minecraft, and you can basically use the same sword and its capabilities in other platforms. And it's the same within real estate. There are companies like Metamundo, which offer an NFT as a digital realm, a house, beautiful architecture, and you can use it across 20 or 30 different metaverses right now. So you can pop that up and it looks the same. You can go into the different experience of the individual platform, but it's across platforms. Then lastly, I would say Adidas, what they're doing with Artifact and their, sorry, not Adidas, Adidas is also doing amazing stuff. Nike with the acquisition of Artifact, they're having and generating digital twins. So they have that combination already around that you buy a digital object like a shirt, but you also get a specific real world sneaker attached to it. And the interest is primarily on the digital object, not the physical object. That's actually the add-on. And those are crazy things that are happening right now. And I would end with Ready Player Me for identity. It's an amazing platform. You can create your avatar on Ready Player Me. Just take a picture of your real self, and they generate an avatar, and they automatically export your avatar to over 1,000 different metaverses right now, and you can use them there. So those are all examples where I think where we're actually going to, but a lot of that is already happening right now.
I wanted to go to Anu because I saw as Nick and Axel was speaking, you were nodding along like enthusiastically. So I'd love to get your input on this.
Yeah, I think it'll be really exciting to see what technologies get picked up. I think the evolution of the metaverse would really depend on how the different universes merge, how they democratize, and what kind of technologies will enable that democratization. I mean, if you look at how Web 1, Web 2 evolved into the democratic platform that we see today, we needed the right technologies. We need people to have the uptake to those technologies, and we will see a natural evolution of that happening. But what's exciting to see is in that space, we are already seeing, I think actually you spoke about digital twins, we see manufacturing going into that space where they're creating digital twins using the metaverse. We see metaverse fashion shows happening. I think there was a big fashion show that happened in the metaverse back end of last year, which was very exciting to see. So I think it really depends on the technology, how it evolves, and how people evolve alongside that technology and change their psychology to adapt to it.
So, and I'm going to stay with you, and then Axel, I'll go to you second. I mean, it seems the stories that both of you told would mean that the industry is kind of really gearing up and ready to provide these Web3 and metaverse experiences. Is that just the hype, or is that true? Is the industry ready for this?
I think it's getting there. I think that they've definitely got the right wheels in place, but there are simple things that need to change. So, for example, some of the devices that we've got that we need to use for the metaverse, they're not really quite there yet. We can see that they're quite clunky. There's a long way for us to go to make sure that it's a friction-free journey. If you look at payments, I think we've come a long way going from translating NFTs into blockchain translating fiat currencies. We've seen a lot of evolution just in the last 5 years. I think things have accelerated just in the last 3 to 4 years in this space. So I think yes, we are gearing up, but I think there's simple things that will pivot them and take us over that tipping point. And that could be just a different kind of headset that enables that friction-free interaction between the real world and the metaverse.
I'm looking for interacting without a headset. I just keep on thinking of that image of Mark Zuckerberg walking past the auditorium full of people in a headset, and it's like a horror movie. But anyway, that's just me. But I love Axel, I'd love to hear your views. I know you talked the story about Nike, but like, is the industry actually ready, or is this just kind of promotion and hype?
Oh wow. I have to say, I might be biased because I was with an organization called the Singularity University in the Valley. And besides that, I would quote William Gibson, like, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. But answering your question now, finally, I think the biggest gap, because everything is around, we have like a Web3 world with all the happenings. So, and I mentioned my kids, right? And it's happening with them. On the other hand side, we have this Web2 world, I would say. And the biggest challenge for me is how can we actually bring those two together, because they coexist besides each other. And they also might be that you buy something with a cryptocurrency, but at the next moment you might drop off at a supermarket, and you want to pay with cryptocurrency at your supermarket with a regular credit card, right? And those are cases which are not as crazy. So I think interconnecting this Web3 metaverse world with a Web2 world, this is a crucial part that we need to tackle.
Yeah, no, I got told off at a tech conference when I said cryptocurrencies aren't very good for payments. And the person on my panel said, I bought a fish taco in Miami last week. So I was told they're coming for our fish taco moments. So Axel, I'm going to stay with you because we have a demonstration that you have, a presentation that you can share with our audience, looking at the metaverse and looking at avatars. So we can take a minute for you to set that up and share your screen with the audience, so you can talk us through that demonstration.
Hopefully that's already working now, because I'm sharing my screen already. Ah, there we are. All right, so this is rather like a short lightning talk to continue on the things that we just discussed. And when we talk in particular about financial services and open banking and payments, I would like to go deeper onto the so-called metaverse finance. And this is my primary focus because I'm with Salesforce's innovation arm. And whenever we drop by at clients, it's obvious that we're moving from a banking so-called 1.0, which is a bank as a trustee, self-service custodian, towards banking 2.0. And we have seen it with all the approaches from neo and challenger banks on unbundling of services, becoming the digital attacker and so on, that were quite successful in the realm. Nevertheless, when we talk about metaverse finance, it is basically that we need to allow a non-custodian view, and I will follow up on that in a second. Suddenly we have, even if we are now on a downturn when it comes to yields, sorry to say, that suddenly we have solutions in place where people actually have and can have high returns on yields and so on. And as I said, Web3 is a primary driver on that. So let's be pragmatic on our topic here. So as an example, and I take that as a provocation, I would even say. So what if, for example, in the realm of payment, you were rewarded by exercise and play? We are all aware that in those terms, it might be not new that you actually get some sort of loyalty points. But there are companies like, for example, Paceline is one of them, where you can actually turn your fitness activities. You get rewards by that. And by just moving 150 minutes a week, you actually get a return by loyalty points. Nobody should be surprised in this group actually about this. But it gets more important and more interesting when we actually make a shift towards the metaverse. Because there are companies like, for example, Kalo, where you can actually, you have a digital avatar, and by your movement, etc., you can turn it into a crypto token, and you can actually exchange that token for real money. Why is that important? One of investors into a competitor of Kalo is called Pattern. And you could actually, the same principles, investor is, by the way, Essex. They had like a revenue increase of over 1000%. So imagine you moved with them, you earned those tokens, and by the value that you have made, you could actually go onto an exchange and trade it against the fiat currency in place. So this is just one example as a provocation how the market is shifting right now, and how suddenly we have something far more beyond value than loyalty points. On the other hand side, closing that, there are play-to-earn models in the metaverse. Like, for example, Axie Infinity is a virtual world, a play-to-earn model, where in the Philippines, we had actually people who played that game, earned money with, currently, because of some disasters there were like 4.1 million unemployed people in the Philippines. And suddenly, a lot of them coordinated through platforms like Discord and so on to earn money, which a way higher salary than they usually earn in the region, and go on an exchange and trade it against a real fiat currency, and they drove their community. There are zillions of stories how they actually went to a supermarket and so on and bought food for their peeps. So this is only one very different example on how payments actually can be executed and how you can earn money in the metaverse. As another example, and as I said, it's a lightning talk, so I'm not going too long here. The question is, what if users can become their own bank? And this is a really controversial topic, I would say, because I myself, I'm part of actually a customer for a company called Monolith out of the UK. And the basic principle there is that I'm the custodian. I do have like a little hardware device, and I actually own the bank account on my own. And by that, I give access to Monolith. They don't know how much money is on there. I don't have to go through a KYC or AML process to actually become a customer of theirs up to a certain point. And I can actually trade with others and do my payments on crypto exchanges. They just build services on top, and that's going back to what I said on combining Web 2 and Web 3, the real world with a more virtual world, because they actually have a partnership with a credit card company. And the moment when you attach a credit card company to their services, you can go into a store and actually pay, but you also have to go through a KYC and AML process for sure, just to be legal. These are some of the changes that are happening right now, and I have a last example in here, and it is, what if we started having phygital investments? Phygital is a strange word, I have to admit, between digital and physical. And to give you an example, when it comes to alternative investments, I mean, within ultra high or high net worth, investing into primary art like a Monet and so on is quite a simple thing if you have the money, right? And it's a good investment. It's a stable investment, obviously, in comparison to others. Nevertheless, like the mass market cannot actually invest into a Monet. And there are companies called Masterworks as only one example. They have like a physical space in New York with a gallery attached where they bought a Monet and other primary art. And you can basically, from $500 upon, you can actually tokenize the asset. You own a piece of that Monet. You can wait until they resell the physical object. Or on the other hand side, you could go on an exchange and basically resell your tokens until the moment and get the yield in up to that moment before they even resell the original painting. Lastly, going back to the metaverse itself, it was really interesting to see there was a company called EveryRealm who really early went into a virtual property development. So they bought a lot of real estate within virtual worlds, and they did go beyond that. Obviously, there's speculation with a value of digital property. But on top of that, they built, for example, shopping districts like Metajuku in Decentraland. And a lot of large companies actually built within that shopping district their shops. So all the brands that we have mentioned before, Gucci and so on, partner with them. And that's actually the space where you can buy your digital goods for other games as well. So as a last example, and it's a short one, and going back to what I said about my sons, where does this shopping experience actually happen? And we have seen it with Animal Crossing only as one game with a partnership like Gucci and so on, that they actually address the target audience, and you can buy the the digital objects, not the physical ones there, and they want to address it towards a new and young target audience. So this is even before a Gen Z, more like a generation alpha that they address. And those are the platforms where the community basically exists and is buying their things. And that's also something that we consider to further go buying on in-world and where the payments happen. As a last slide, I've been to the Metaverse Amsterdam conference, and there was a presentation by a 12-year-old actually on the opportunities that she foresees as a borderless revolution within the Metaverse. And it's so impressive. I'm 46 years old, by the way, and it was so impressive just to get the potential from a 12-year-old. And that's something that I would encourage lastly, because we're continuing with the conversation right now, just to give with you, just listen to the young target audience, 12-year-old. It's amazing, and I'm still blown away by that. So this was the lightning talk. I could go on for hours, but happily, we now look into the future with the group.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you ended on a vision of a 12-year-old girl inspiring an audience. I'm in favor of that going forward. So we're going to move on. Since we're talking about shopping and that was an excellent presentation, we're also we got to delve into the payments industry, because obviously you need to do payments to and be involved in shopping. So I really wanted to look at, is the payments industry that we all know and love ready for the metaverse revolution? So Nick, I'm going to come back to you and ask you first on what your views are on that. Are payments ready for Web3 and metaverse?
I think absolutely. I mean, you look at the payments that are happening in the worlds that Axel just talked about. In the gaming industry, I mean, payments are very active there in purchasing digital goods. You think about the API enablement of financial institutions and FinTechs, and developing an iPhone or an Android application, to support a certain use case. Your ability to go and develop something that would be easy to use in the metaverse is just simply the addition of a new app to your suite of applications. Back when Google came out with the Google Glass, I became a glass hole very quickly. And my Finicity started as a personal financial management app. And we developed aggregation to support that PFM. And when the Glass came out, I built a Glass app, to go along with our Android and iOS app. And so I think of these metaverse worlds as new platforms, and inside those platforms, the technology that's used to support mobile applications and web applications are extensible into building solutions for these different metaverses. And so I think we're absolutely ready. And as we see more and more consumer adoption and more, killer use cases, we'll see more companies building solutions into these worlds.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting. I like the idea building new and experimenting and taking advantage of new platforms you see emerging. So Anu, I'll go over to you. I mean, how do you see the payments industry? Do you think it's ready for what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Nick. I absolutely think that we are ready. It was great to see the evolution of kind of seeing a blockchain evolve into fiat, connecting into the ecosystem that is the metaverse. And we've seen in the recent past where NFTs have been bought for very large value transactions going into millions. So we've really evolved from gamers buying a helmet and some kind of a weapon for a couple of dollars to multi-million pound transactions happening in the metaverse, which is great to see. And that itself tells you the kind of controls, the data, the ecosystem that has been built around the metaverse that makes people feel comfortable using payments in the metaverse itself. So I think it can only get better from here. And I think it'll force organizations that support payments to look at their services slightly differently, especially if you look at the metaverse's converging and democratization around it. We can see that the services that they offer will come at a cheaper price and enable more people joining in and taking part in the metaverse ecosystem.
Interesting. So I'll move on to Axel. What are your views looking at the payments industry in this world?
I know the comparison is always drawn with Nokia and Apple, right? And with the iPhone and the expectation there. Did we expect actually that some amazing startups like Wise, back then TransferWise, came up with a different cross-border solution, which is smartly done that lower the cost of cross-border transactions? I don't know. Then I worked a couple of years back for a company with a blockchain solution also for cross-border transactions to lower the price there. So what I'm saying is, I don't know if they're ready, but maybe the market itself gets disrupted by a new player that comes to the market where we didn't think of before. So I think it's not the question, are we ready right now? It's rather the question, who's popping up and disrupting the market right now? And that's happening all the time. So as an innovation player, I would say like we need to be ready, and no matter if we think we're ready or not, we need to be ready for the next disruptor that is going to come for sure.
It's very interesting. I have lots of conversations in the industry and on this side of the world where people talk about crypto and blockchain, cross-border payments often comes up, and there's a lot of hope for fintech startups. But another part of my world is, most banks are going through an ISO 20022 migration for cross-border payments, which is taking up all of their time right at the moment, so you see these two levels of emerging technologies in the traditional banking world working almost for the same goals from different planets. It'd be interesting to see which one kind of succeeds in the future that actually lowers and makes cross-border payments more efficient. Oh yeah, Nick, make a comment on that, please.
Yeah, no. So I just had this thought, when Axel was presenting his slides, and he talked about this idea of, you being your own bank. That just really resonated for me, because one of the things that Finicity's vision has been with regards to personal data is, a consumer effectively becoming your own bureau. And so this idea of data ownership, this idea of just the mass personalization. We think about financial institutions and financial accounts and moving to personalization. You go all the way down to the consumer, all the way down to the business, whether you're thinking of a bureau or thinking of a bank. I think that's a very interesting direction, because we all are very different. We have different needs. We have different financial lives. And so, I think that's a really fascinating aspect of this, is how deeply personal all this stuff is. And one of the things that technology and the mass availability of technology and innovation does is it allows for more and more customization to your particular needs, your particular phase of life, And I think that's a very powerful addition, at least in my brain, to the idea of a consumer-owned bank. I love that.
Or in the future, we will all be a bank at some point.
Yeah. Every consumer, every person is their own bank.
I mean, but it's interesting. I love what we're talking about this, and I'll go to Anu for this. I'm very interested in the gap, right? So the metaverse is in Web3 are very buzzy terms right at the moment, and they're kind of on the top, heading to the top of that hype cycle. But where is that gap between all this buzzy talk that we're a part of that noise, this panel, and eventually down the road when it's commonplace and it's not cutting edge and it's part of like how small or large is that gap, and when will we see that future? Anyway, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think definitely an interesting question. So I don't think there is a massive gap. As I said, that there are companies that are making those strides to close the gap that we can see today. For me, I think it's twofold. One is around the physical technology that connects the metaverse with the real world, how that evolves and how that makes the experience more friction-free. And that will let us kind of transact better between the metaverse and the real world. I think secondly, for me, it's sort of the controls, the comfort that people feel around the use of the metaverse. There are still kind of questions to be answered on our GDPR when we look at cross-border transactions. How do we ensure that data is treated the way that it should be treated when we have that kind of interaction within the metaverse? There are the kind of controls around privacy, child protection. How to make sure that when we have children in the metaverse, that they are protected in the metaverse. So there are certain kind of due diligence questions that need to be answered and addressed. And I think finally, for me, in the metaverse, it's about kind of what generation is going to pivot this. So I think if you look at the uses of the metaverse today, there are people who live and breathe this because they've been gamers since they were 3 years old. And there are people who literally, they are fudging themselves through. And it's completely understandable because it requires a certain level of psychological development. And if you've grown up with it, you're going to have enough, neurons connected to it, and it's going to feel like free flow. So it requires the right generation of people to tip it over and adopt it to make it successful.
Interesting. I wanted to talk, I know this seems to be a very pro metaverse panel, but I wanted to talk a little bit about potential risks and maybe, of course, opportunities that come from those risks. So Nick, I'll go to you. What are some of the potential risks we see?
Well, as you think about the convergence of open banking, digital identity, consumer data rights, data privacy, all these things are coming together. And within the next, 5-10 years, we're going to see that picture come to pass. You go into an alt space world and you are engaging with people all over the world. You're sharing information, you're potentially transacting with people all over the world. And so when you do a transaction, there has to be an element of trust. And so there has to be a reveal of information that's trustable, that, if you're going to engage with somebody in business in a virtual world, you need to make sure that they are who they say they are and they can do what they say they are going to do. And anytime you start to share data or you share some element of how you're going to pay, it introduces personal data loss risk. It introduces payment loss risk. And I think really that's the job of the regulators. They're trying to eliminate loss. They're trying to eliminate fraud. And so if we can be thoughtful in the way that this evolves and develops so that we're always maintaining really the best of the best in terms of consumer data privacy, in terms of ensuring the liability protection for the consumer is thought of when we think about transacting, all of the components of that exist from a market to market basis in the 60 plus markets that are doing open banking. So this definitely extends. This is really just another view of the same kind of experience. We just can't run too fast to avoid those things, because if you start to lose, you go into a place that doesn't feel comfortable, then you're not going to get the kind of adoption that maybe you want. And so I think it's par for the course with all the discussions we've had about the convergence of these multiple galaxies. And as long as we can keep the consumer first, we can keep the transactions safe, we can keep their data safe, then I think this place can thrive, or these places can thrive.
I don't know whether I should move on to ask Axel or Anno, because both of you were nodding vigorously as Nick was speaking. So Axel, I don't know whether you have anything to add to the potential risks at all.
Absolutely. And when the innovation guy gets excited, it's sometimes a little tricky, right? Because it glorifies and is enthusiastic. But when we're talking about risk, imagine with the things you own, like an NFT is worth a lot of dollars. And then suddenly in a transaction, it's just lost somewhere, or fraud and so on. So there is a reason why we rely on systems that took a long time to establish for transactions, and having the security that it works and that I get my money back and so on. So this is rather the Wild West, I would say. But the positive side is that from a regulatory sense, we have seen it with centralized exchanges who suddenly got a BaFin license. We see the progress right now with all its pros and cons on CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. And nevertheless, when it comes to metaverses, I would say, as a comparison, VR chat is one example of a metaverse, which is highly popular, but it has a strong community, but it's very much not regulated. And I would even say it's dangerous, and I would never let my kids in there. So I think to balance that out and to figure out and learn about things and the progression, that's something where we need education. And also from my side as an innovator, that's where we always need to balance out what can we advise to our clients and what can we help them to bring to life. And that's definitely a thing besides enthusiasm and risk that we should not forget.
Anu, I'd love to hear your views as well on some of the potential risks.
Yeah, I think both Nick and Axel covered a number of topics related to risk. So I'd like to throw in there something slightly different. So one of the things that we need to realize is, like any other marketplace, the value that is given to any assets in the metaverse depends on the value the community gives to it. I think that's something lots of people don't understand. So we've seen some NFTs, the value of it change drastically just being in the metaverse. I've seen Nike shoes being sold for $20,000. So I think there's definitely a level of education that's required for people who are buying, selling, creating assets in the metaverse, and the risk associated with having that kind of asset, owning that kind of asset in the longer term. So I think that's something I'd like to put out there.
Interesting. So I have one final question for all of you, but I just wanted to double check there's no questions from the audience. No, I don't see any chat, but that's fine. This has been an excellent discussion anyway. So we're going to have a final question for all of you that I want you all to leave our audience with, which is what will the future look like? What's the future going to look like in reality? I personally want to be able to know what my kitchen extension will look like before they start knocking down walls. That's what my hope is for the metaverse. But we'll start with Nick. What does the future look like for the metaverse?
I think I'm actually quite bullish on the direction that Meta is going down. I believe that they're making massive bets in this space. There's also been a lot of startup activity in the space. The COVID era really kind of pointed to this need for a hybrid work environment, this need for being able to, engage with other people, from home. And so I think that trend that started during COVID in earnest is going to continue, whether it be personally or in a work environment. And it definitely is here to stay and will continue to grow. The question is how prevalent it will be in our work lives, how prevalent it will be in our home life. And, you know, because you think about putting on the headset and it's just not, it's like sweaty and it's not awesome. I mean, it's a great experience, but then you mess up your hair. And so it's like, it's almost like you have to get beyond the devices that enable the metaverse in order for it to really become mainstream, because there's some cost, right, in doing that. So a couple thoughts there.
Excellent. So Anu, what is the vision? What does the future look like?
Sorry, I was just thinking that I don't think Axel is going to have the problem of messy hair with the headset.
Some of us are lucky. Yes.
Love that. So I think for me, the vision, I'm definitely bullish. I was skeptical at the beginning because I felt that the metaverse just took people away too much from real life. And I'm a firm believer that there's a lot that we need to experience in our world before we try and experience another world. But during COVID, I saw how it provided kind of safe haven for people who couldn't actually physically connect. And that in itself showed me the value that it will have in the future. So I think if we get it right, if we have the right technology and if we create that safe space, I think it has a lot of potential going forward. I'll leave you with that.
Excellent. So Axel, bring us home. Give us the future that you're looking for.
The future should be positive, I think, and that's why I would like to talk about sustainability. And as a use case, and it's already happening, a lot of clothes are thrown away, every collection and so on. So there is a company called Carlings. They brought you a white shirt that you could buy, and you could actually do an Instagram filter on top with an NFT image, basically, and it changes. And that's how they actually want to help on the throwaway society and make that better. And another example, lastly, would be on, we talked about digital factories. A large car manufacturer is actually building the biggest factory first in a metaverse, and they're simulating the best opportunities to actually build that company to also lower the carbon footprint. That's something where I believe in, but also the company that I'm with, and I'm really bullish on that one as well, for a better cause, actually.
No, I think, yeah, when you started talking about sustainability and clothing, I was thinking about how Helen started off this discussion about buying clothes, so we can have our giant wardrobes in the metaverse, and our physical wardrobes will be much smaller. Maybe that'll be the future. This has been very informative, very interesting discussion. And I just want to thank OBE for inviting me to host this. And I want to thank Axel, Nick, and Anu for a wonderful discussion. And I want to thank our audience for listening. So thank you very much.
Liz, thank you for being such a brilliant host and getting us very quickly from that big buzzword of the metaverse down into the detail of risk and data, and Nick talking about what it means for the customer, and Axel's vision of what we could all be our own bank. It's sort of democratizing it all again. Absolutely brilliantly hosted, thank you. I'm curious, Liz, are you bullish or are you a little bit skeptical?
I want to say both. It was very interesting when Nick was talking about, wearing the headsets. And I think, when the telephone first started, you wanted to make a phone call on the street, you had to go into these boxes, and now we all carry around small little devices. And that I'm looking for the conversation to move beyond playing a fantasy character in a role game, into how it might actually be a part of our everyday lives. So I'm a bit bearish on the tech bro hype, but very bullish on what it means for people's lives in the future. And I think sometimes that reality is working in the background while hype is having a dance somewhere else.
That's probably a good place. We've had a lot of comments, as often I get them on WhatsApp, and if I had to choose a word, okay, it would be that people have been blown away. Gobsmacked was another one, informed, fascinating, inspired. but blown away, I think, by the depth of this conversation. And I just quickly reading them, it seems that people really are beginning to slowly get it. You know, I had a little bit of a Damascus moment, and I think during this conversation, our audience have also had their mini Damascus moments. And that's a privilege that, and thank you for that gift that you've actually given everybody. So thank you very much. So I would like to thank our panel for what clearly has been a masterclass on the metaverse. Absolutely outstanding. So thank you very much. And also thank you for being so game in trying to get onto the metaverse. If ever we were to share the out clips, which we don't, you would have seen how valiantly some of us, Nick was in the metaverse, and so was Axel, and a couple of us struggled. So thank you for being so game. We will persevere because that's what technology rather is all about, and we will deliver something from that metaverse. I would also like to thank my team. The OBE team work incredibly hard, and in particular, I'd like to have a shout out for one particular person, that's Kaylee. Kaylee is our operations customer success manager. She has thrown herself wholeheartedly. She didn't miss a beat to embrace all things metaverse. So I know you're listening, Kaylee, so thank you very much. There is a drink with your name on it this evening, and there's something in the post for you as well. Okay, so all that remains is for me to thank you, our audience, and for all your generous comments, sharing this content online. So please do reshare and spread this knowledge so we can all learn and all be informed and inspired. All that remains is for me to say goodbye and the very, very best of health. See you very soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye for now.